Good day, everyone. A bit earlier on, you were asked who was the longest serving General Secretary, and some of you knew the answer. But who was the longest serving Treasurer of the Baptist Union? Anyone know? No prizes. We got someone to volunteer. As far as I'm aware, the answer is Henry Smith. And I think he served as treasurer for an almighty 46 years. And there was a road named after him. Not a very long road. There are only 3 houses in that road. And how do I know that? Because I lived in one of those houses for about 9 years. So where is this road? It's in Kimberley, where I lived as a youngster. Nothing to do with finances, just interesting fact. I love finances, but I understand that not everyone loves finances. Some people here might think you can't understand finances. You can, because I am going to present some of the finances without making mention to any numbers at all. And I think that might help. So what am I going to be dealing with this morning, today? First of all, I'm going to be dealing with the... Okay, not close enough, okay. First of all, I'm going to be dealing with the Baptist Union financial statements. First of all, to look at 2022's actual against the budgeted amounts, and then also the 22 actual against the previous year's actual. Then I'm going to be dealing with what is called the combined financial statements, and I will explain what that means. There I'll be comparing the actual amounts for 22 versus 21. And then at the end I will be dealing with the budget for next year. So let's have a look at it. Okay, this doesn't come up the way I designed it. Anyway, what we've got is the budget for 2022, and about half of that deals with the membership fees. But that means that about the other half of the budget is for things other than membership fees. So about a third of it relates to, a third of the membership fee relates to church giving, another third relates to the rental income, and the other ones are then split up between the other different categories as well. Oh, look at that, the figures are coming up. Anyway, let's go ahead. So that is what the budget is made up of. But when we look at the actual, we must remember that when we prepared the budget, this was towards the end of 2021, still at the height of COVID. And so it was difficult to know what 2022 was going to present. As it so happened that in most categories of income, the actual amounts were more than the budgeted amount. The only one where there was a slight difference was in mission giving. But for the others, there were increases. In some cases, quite large increases. For example, for membership fees, there was an expectation that with COVID, there might be challenges with churches paying. We got a lot more. Church giving and the rental income was also quite a bit more than was budgeted. Okay, so we'll just leave the income on that line. We'll just have to see what's happening here. Okay, it's happening there. These ones that are coming up now just show you the difference between the actual and the budget. So you can see that in some cases the the variances were quite a bit more than what was budgeted for. And so this column now is what the actual amounts, and you can see proportionately the membership fees were smaller than had been budgeted for, but the church giving and the rental income was of a similar category, similar size. The pastoral one was small, and then the other income is quite big, and that is mainly related to income from appeals. And that is because the budget, we didn't really give much emphasis on it, because basically income from appeals is paid out, as we will see in the next slide. So we'll deal with it on a similar basis now, but now that I understand it a bit better, we will put all the figures in. Okay, so we can see that was the budget for expenses, and just over half related to employee costs, and then there were smaller amounts that went to national administration. Missions and grants was also a fairly big amount, campus expenses, and then the smaller ones as well. So when we look at the actual, we can see employee costs were more than were budgeted for, and that was largely as a result of Colin Diesel coming on board. The national administration costs were also up, and that was as a result of more travel being allowed during the dying years of COVID. Campus expenses were also higher, and the expectation had been with COVID that there wouldn't be much activity on the property of the Baptist Union. There was more, so obviously expenses increased. And then missions and grants also were higher, and that is as a result of extra missionaries being paid for, and also some of the grants that were issued were increased in size as well. Not much increase in pastoral costs, and then other expenses also came up. Large increase, again, that's because of the appeal income. So you can see in this last column on the right-hand side the relative size of the expenses. And we can see there that, again, the bottom one on the right, the appeal ones, is quite a large proportion of the total, but that just gives you an overview. So this looks like at the overall view of income versus expenses. If you look at the green one on the left, that is the expense block. On the right, the income block in blue. If you put them on a scale, the income block is bigger than the expense block. That's the way you want it. Income greater than expenses. And the yellow one and the red ones on the top show you how much there was a variation from the budget. But again, if you add those two blocks together, again, the income side is bigger than the expense side, which is good. If we look at the comparison of the actuals, we can see that accumulated funds increased from just over 5.1 million to 5.5 million, which is good. The loans that the Baptist Union owe reduced from 1.3 million to just under $1 million, another favourable one. However, the bank balances went down, which isn't the best of expectations, but you must also realize that some of the income that was received from the Baptist Union was in fact transferred and deposited into the Baptist Union trust funds, and so the amount the Baptist Union has with the trust funds has gone up from about 750,000 to 1,150,000 positive. So the message that I'd like to give in relation to 2022 is that the finances continue to improve. It's also good that the actual surplus exceeded the budgeted surplus. There's been a continued reduction in loans, and that the Baptist Union is regarded as a going concern. If we look at the actuals now, we are looking at some of the figures here. So we're looking at actuals for 22 versus 21. It looks like the membership fees have stayed stagnant, but what we need to realize is that in 2021, there is an amount of 165,000 in 2021 that in fact related to the prior year. So if you take that out, the membership fees have increased. Something similar in church giving. It looks like it came down, but in the previous year, it was a once-off large amount from an individual of 100,000. You take that out, and then the church giving has increased. Rental income shows a small increase. Income from appeals has gone up a large amount. And just to give you a breakdown of what the income from appeals is, the largest amount was due to flood relief. You remember there was an appeal after the floods around about Easter time last year in KwaZulu-Natal, and the amount that was received was about 285,000. There was also about 130,000 received by way of a Christmas appeal, and just under 100,000 by way of an Easter appeal. And then bequests and other income show a sharp decline, but that was because in 2021 there was a large once-off bequest. We can't expect to know when we're going to receive them or if we're going to receive them, but that large amount was approximately 1.1 million. So as you can understand, a very large proportion. Mission giving was up, and then pastoral fees for 2022 was the first time that was received. So that gives you the income. And I think I might have just noted on a previous slide that the figures in red are also shown elsewhere in this presentation. So if you see them, you should hopefully recognize them. If you look at the expenses for the 2 years, the employee costs show a sharp increase, and that was because with a relatively few number of employees, bringing a senior person like Colin on board had a big increase in the salary costs. And again, we saw in the previous slide a big increase in appeal income, and whatever comes in is paid out, and so that comes across there as well. Missions and grants also have gone up, and that is as a result of extra person being supported, and also some increases in the grants that were given as well. And there was also some missions traveling that took place to Butuli and Zambia, and those are categories of expenses that only happen on a every 3-year basis, so it's not a regular basis as well. Operating costs have come down, and that is as a result of certain amounts in 2021 not occurring again in 2022. For example, there was a large amount for consultancy fees. That was what was paid to Colin before he came on board. So part of the consultancy fees in 2021 then became part of the salary on a comparable basis as well. But there was also extra amounts that were incurred in 2022. With a decline in COVID, there was extra amounts spent on travel as well. National Ministry came down, and then there was also an increase in amount on pastoral care, and that was largely as a result of a renewed conference that the Baptist Women's Department held in 2022. So if we look at the comparison of income and expenses for 2022. You can see there was a surplus before tax, bit of interest, and then tax as well. And there was a higher amount for tax, and that is as a result of the expenditure on the property going down that we saw on the previous slide, and that was because in 2021, with COVID, there was a lot of expenses on the property up at Baptist Union that wasn't recovered. That changed in 2022, so as a result of that, the expenses came down, and the Baptist Union only pays tax on the rent less the expenses related to that. And with expenses going down, the taxable amount has gone up. So there is a surplus in 2022, but less than the previous year, largely as a result of that bequest that came in 2021. Now, I said we're going to deal with combined financial statements. What are combined financial statements? We've got two different Baptist Union entities. We've got the Baptist Union, and then we've got the trust funds. They have the same non-profit number. So that means for tax purposes, we need to have a set of financial statement that combines the two. And that is why the financial statements that I believe have been made available to you is on that basis. And how do we do that? We take the financial statements of the Baptist Union, the trust funds, add them together. But sometimes there are balances between the one and the other, or amounts of income and expenses, and then they are eliminated. And that is how we prepare the combined financial statements. Just to illustrate how we do that, on this slide we show initially what the surplus is for the Baptist Union, and then for the trust funds, the Baptist Union ones are amounts that we have already mentioned. And then the trust funds, you can see the surplus for 2022 is a lot less than 2021. And that is largely as a result of the trust funds having some of their investments in listed entities, unit trusts, and related companies. And in 2021, there was an increase in the value of those investments of the order of 600,000, whereas in 2022, there was a decline in their value of 375,000. So it was nearly a 1 million rand swing between one to the other. So that is why the surplus for the trust fund is down quite a bit. And then we are eliminating that, and that is largely the amounts that the Baptist Union pays across on deposit to the trust funds. The trust fund shows them as part of the equity, and we eliminate it. So that is what the elimination is. And then also the loans that the Baptist Union have are largely to the trust funds. And seeing we're combining them, we now eliminate them. So the net loans is less than was in the trust fund financial statements. Then in the bank balances and investments, you can see basically they just added together, one small adjustment. And then for equity, they again added up, and then the amounts that have been paid across to the trust funds are eliminated there. So that is largely the major amounts that you get in the financial statements of the combined financial statements. Okay, then the budget, that should say 2024 budget. The major assumptions that have been made in preparing the budget is that there is no increase in membership fees. But then as far as the pastoral fees is concerned, as has already been mentioned, the expectation is that that will become compulsory, and therefore the amount that will be received in 24 will be more than is likely to be received in 2023. And then, as already been mentioned, the Baptist Union is looking to employ 2 additional posts, a national network developer and a pastoral support person as well. And part of that will be funded from a donation that has been received specifically for that. So that will help to fund that. Also, that there will be some savings in property-related costs. The Baptist Union have installed solar, so that will hopefully reduce costs. And also there's a problem with the water, and so the meter has been replaced, and so expectation is that that will reduce the costs. So this slide shows what on the income side is concerned, what 2024 is against 2023. But this hides something, a serious issue. We saw on one of the very early slides with those colors that the actual was more than the budget. And those were quite big increases. Are we going to see the same for 2023? At the moment, unfortunately not. Of these items of projected amounts, almost all of them are less than what was budgeted for. If we just look, membership fees, the amount there is 89% of what was budgeted for. The rent is quite high, 93%. Some of the others are unfortunately not good news. Church giving, only 74% of what was budgeted for. The pastoral ones, 50%. The only one that shows an increase is in other income, and that is partly due to some sale of an asset and some bequests. So that is my big concern when we look at the future, because we're using these amounts, and the 2024 amounts, in many cases, these budgeted amounts are even less than was budgeted for 2023. Yes, we've got expenses that are going up by inflation, we've got new employees, but unfortunately our income is not doing that well. And so that is the challenge I'd like to just present. Just to mention one or two issues there, I think Colin has already mentioned earlier on that there's a fair amount of churches who have been invoiced for fees who haven't paid it. So there are Baptist unions, hopefully they're still supporting it, but they're not paying their fees. And so if you've got contacts with those churches, please can you just speak to them to say, we need them to pay the fees. And let's look at church giving. That's voluntary over and above our fees. Just to give you some context, if we look at 2020, the year of COVID, what amount was received? Round about 650,000. 2021, 650,000 again. 2022 showed an increase, 700,000. What are we looking at for this year? 601,000. So that shows a reduction. We've had higher amounts before. Here's the frightening one. What was it in 2019, the year before COVID? 1.4 million rand. That shows the reduction that the Baptist Union has received away from church giving. So if we really want the Baptist Union to go forward and to increase its financial progress, we need to seriously take this message on board and saying we need to consider whether we can pay extra amounts from the churches as well. Rental income is going up. Members, pastoral fees, as I said, an increased number of people are expected to pay for that in 2024. Other income, part of the amount for 2024 is the amount that has been received specifically for the new employees. So that looks at the income side. Oh yes, I forgot. I put blocks in here as well. So those who don't like figures, you can also see the relative size of these as well. So for the 2 years, the boxes are relatively similar in size, but you can see that membership fees is and remains a substantial portion of what the total budget is. Okay, that's income. Let's look at expenses. If I can get it going. Oh dear, it seems to be stuck. Can you help them, Mark? Okay, let's Okay, so on this slide we look at the expenses, and this shows that there is a large increase in the costs for employees, and that is as a result of the extra employees. So that covers a large proportion of the expenses is for the employees, the majority of it. And then also the missions has gone up by a bit as well, and that is a result of an additional person being supported, and also increase in some other grants as well. You can just see there the comparison that the employee costs are a bigger proportion of the total. A large number of the expenses are only going up by similar by the inflation rate, and the big increases are largely in relation to some of the missions, where, as I said, there's additional amounts that are being paid out. But the biggest one is the extra employees. If you take that out, the increase in the cost is fairly nominal. And then this one just shows you what the projected final situation is: income versus expenses, some interest, and then tax. And that shows that for 2023, we are expecting a surplus of around about 9,000 Rand, which is fairly nominal. But unfortunately, as has already been alluded to, the deficit for next year is of the order of 250,000. And that is why I said earlier on, when we were looking at the income, it's achievable, but we need the churches to pay their membership fees, and we need the churches to get back to the more normal level of giving that they did before COVID. So that gives you just an overview of the situation. And so at this point, we will open it up to any questions or comments people might have.
Anybody got any questions for Garth regarding the finances? You can just come up to the podium. Is there anybody?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jason. I am from Cornerstone Word Ministries in Port Elizabeth, and I also serve on the executive of the Eastern Province Baptist Network. I sort of, and you need to correct me if I'm wrong, but it almost sounds like we are preaching to the converted, because you wouldn't be allowed to be at this assembly if our fees were not up to date. And so it falls on sort of like the network sort of executive to go back and speak to the churches, who aren't present and need to pay. But I've also seen at my previous church and this church that in the establishment of a proper stewardship program, it makes a major difference in the income of the churches. I don't think, and maybe I speak under correction because I assume that we're all Christians and I expect the best of us, is that I do think churches would pay if they could pay. But I think there needs to be a bit of proactivity in terms of teaching both pastors and leaders and even churches on giving and stewardship. And out in the Eastern Cape, we have a conference coming up on the 4th of November for pastors and church leaders. And one of the workshops we have is a workshop on stewardship, in teaching pastors and leaders how you speak about money, how to apply biblical principles in that. And so I would, just sort of encourage sort of the NLC to look into sort of teaching and training on stewardship. Someone like Graham Wood, at Trinity, we saw that make a big difference, where we established a stewardship committee and a program made a significant difference in the finances and income of the church. And so I think, as opposed to just saying, pay, let's see how we can solve the problem by being proactive and provide some teaching and training on the matter. Thank you.
Thanks for that comment. I think you're quite correct that to a certain extent I'm preaching to the converter, and that is why I did make the comment earlier on that we should also be speaking to others we might know at other churches. And I think that finances is not just the responsibility of the church treasurer. It's got to be owned by the whole church leadership and then the church as well.
Andrew Everett from Berea Baptist Church. Just a question, and then based on the answer, one follow-up. What is the increase to the membership fees for the 2024 budget?
As I indicated earlier on the slide, the budget shows no increase in the amount per member, and that's partly as a result of there still being a fair number of churches not paying their membership fees. So I think the feeling was we didn't want to overly burden them. So it's a two-edged sword, unfortunately.
My concern is at the 2019 Assembly, it was brought to the Assembly floor that the membership fee had not been increased for a substantial period of time. And at that Assembly, the decision was made, it was voted on, it was agreed that every year the membership fee would go up in commensurate with inflation, to prevent the issue that we had at that Assembly with there not having been an increase for so many years, and with the BU being in a very huge deficit because of that. My concern is that in not increasing the membership fee, one, we're going against that decision from the Assembly, and two, we're going to put ourselves back in the same position again. If we don't increase the membership fee on an annual basis, we're not even going to be treading water, we're going to be going backwards.
That predates my time. Colin, I don't know if you want to speak to
Yeah, we haven't put through this year. COVID, we didn't increase membership fees for obvious reasons. Churches struggled financially. Last year we brought a 10 Rand increase to the membership of fees. This year, as Garth said, if we increase the membership fees but people still not are paying, we still owe it close to R1 million. We can actually come out without any membership fee quite comfortably if churches just paid their current membership fees before we even consider further increases. All we're going to do is burden those that are already paying and punish those that are already paying and not letting the guys that aren't paying get away with it. So I think we need to first fix up the payment ethos of the churches before we consider another increase.
Joe Fortuyn from Capital City, Dear Glory Baptist. I just want to leave a thought that we can think about in terms of, we can, in our associations, we know our weaker financial churches. And if we can, if you're financially stronger than a few churches, maybe you can just decide to support, whether it's in a small way, whether it's in a larger way, because everything is about the Baptist Union financial position. And if you see you can pay for a pastor's fee for the year, why don't you do it? If you can make a contribution towards them in a specific way financially, why don't we do it? Because ultimately it's not about me, it's about our association. And just a thought you can discuss in your associations and see how you can, support the bigger picture that we are in. Thank you.
Thanks for that comment.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?